Hello, this is episode 5 of Making Change. This is Lisa Mazzonetto. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor, licensed clinical addiction specialist, and we have an awesome episode for today.
We do have an awesome episode. This is Kathy Godfrey, and I don't have any credentials except I've lived a wild, crazy life. And I've been working with folks mostly in recovery, but really not just substance abuse recovery, but I like to say these days, recovery of joy is what I do privately in working with folks. And we do have an excellent guest with us today. This is the first time that we have added a guest. Yay!
Very special guest.
And this is my ex-husband / dear friend, Dale Godfrey. So you can say hi, Dale.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. I just happened to be in town and they were doing the podcast. So, and I've been listening. It's just, this is the themes of the podcast of talking about value and that creating our experience. It's something it's been everything as far as changing my experience, applying some of the messages from this. So I'm happy to be here.
So glad to have you. Very excited, our very first special guest. So today's episode is going to be probably, as Kathy mentioned before we recorded, a 6-part series on relationships. So we are going to talk about relationships today, and what a more perfect opportunity to have this discussion with Dale being in town. So I was thinking about recently, Kathy, you asked what made me think about choosing this topic for today. And each week in my private practice, there are usually themes that emerge in the week of what clients bring in. And this particular week, there were just a lot of discussions about relationships and various forms, romantic relationships, employer-employee relationships, friendships. And just how people were coming in talking about, whatever was coming up for them due to an issue in a relationship, and how I continued to reflect back how that was really showing up as their self-definition and what was showing up for them in these situations. And it just it really caused me to reflect on, of course, my own relationship, some of my own challenges in the past in relationships. Kathy was front and center for a very, very difficult breakup I went through, and she ever so gently and lovingly tried to reflect how that my suffering and my pain was really rooted in my self-definition. And there were many times I was like, whatever, Kathy. And of course, she was true, or she was right. And, and it took time for me to really recognize that shift for me and how that was true. And so it just came to me as something being really in the forefront of my week in my practice and with sitting with clients. And then when you said Dale was in town, I'm like, and there you go.
Perfect timing. So it's, those of you who are listening who have worked with me know, of course, that my whole, my doorway to this freedom was my struggle with relationships. So it's the perfect topic for me too. And it's one that I talk about with clients every single time I meet with them, I think, in some way. And I just want to do a quick little review of the simplest possible way to freedom in any of this, in any concept or any definition. And that is that we experience what we look for. Mm-hmm. So relationships are not an exception to that. So if I am, if my self-definition is one of a lack of worthiness, then I am going to experience that other person as evidence of my lack of worthiness, no matter what they do. And so I used to have this story that I told myself, like, as I would have one long-term relationship that would blow up, and I would go into another long-term relationship that would blow up. And that was kind of my my MO was a serial monogamist, trying to find a person who would make me feel better about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all many years later that I realized that, of course, no one can do that. And it's not because of something lacking in them. It's because if I'm the one holding the definition, then I am the only one that can question it and ultimately can change it. And so that really was what had to fall apart for me in order to be free myself and to be helpful at all to anyone else. So Dale, of course, was my husband number 3. And there had been a couple of like 6-7 year relationships in between there, in between husbands, even, because I was like, I just was so determined to get it right. So every time I would get in a relationship and realize that that wasn't the thing, I didn't know where to go with that. And so I thought, well, there must be something wrong with me. I'm going to stick this out. And then I would try to stick it out. I would try to stay. And of course that wasn't helpful and didn't work. And that led me to one relationship after another. And then when Dale and I met, and I'm definitely going to ask him to talk a bit about our history, but when we met, I still was in that mode of trying to, in fact, I was still living with somebody and had been living with him for almost 7 years when I met Dale. And so I was still looking for that one that would make me feel different about myself, which they all did at first, of course, because really I just stopped focusing on my suffering and focused on them, right? which made it seem like it was going to be better. So the book, of course, that I wrote was to Dale. It's like a letter to him, owning our experience from this new perspective that I have in our relationship. So I don't know if we'll just maybe let this unfold to include whatever kind of relationships, it does. But since we have Dale here today, probably it might be more on the romantic relationships today. We'll see, wherever.
Sure. And just a quick plug for the book, Addiction in a Nutshell. So if y'all want to read some great information, Kathy has some great tools in the back of that book after describing an amazing story. So
thank you for that. Yeah,
absolutely. So Dale.
Yeah. Relationships. I think that in a relationship, the number one thing is I didn't want to be alone. That's what I was looking for in a relationship. And when I met Kathy, I thought it was perfect because she's very codependent. So I'm like, I'm definitely not going to be alone.
That's a true thing.
Here's the problem with that, though. The other thing was, as far as the way I defined a relationship, or what I was looking for, like I say, number one, I just didn't want to be alone. And I needed to be reassured that on a daily basis. And it must have been exhausting for her, because the way I look at that reassurance and to know I wasn't going to be alone, I compared it to manna. It was only good for a day. You're going to have to do it again tomorrow. And I was very hypersensitive to any type of change, because, I needed the consistency to be reassured. And then my value, when we talk about value, what I brought into the relationship, and I just want to say this, that my value really defined my experience. That's what created the experience of the relationship, the way I felt about myself. And, so my MO, as far as relationship goes, my value, I just felt like what I had learned early in childhood was that, I wasn't important, because the environment I grew up in was not conducive to being, you feeling encouraged or loved. And so I brought all that into the relationship. And I called it the show. I mean, that was kind of that's what I did. I was like, well, if I can be witty, funny, smart, achieve success, make money, then I can be approved of. And so to keep all this show going, I mean, it was just, that's what I did on a daily basis. And then you throw in addiction, and the show turns into a shit show. And so it was, yeah. So I looked at Kathy as this incredibly strong, accomplished, smart, witty, clever woman that I was very attracted to. So I was like, this is perfect. And, when you talk about your value, it's almost like when you're doing a show, you're creating this persona. I kind of was just oblivious to what was really at the core, because through all that, I was still alone. This being with someone, being with her, and we had this life that we were moving through and doing all the things that defines a relationship. I myself, I was I still felt alone, and it was very frustrating. And I just, at that point, I couldn't see the way I was looking at myself. If you would have told me, listen, Dale, you don't think very much of yourself. You don't think very highly. And I'd be like, you don't know what you're talking about. I got it going on. Check this out. I can give you the checklist. Okay. But it's, over the years, we did everything. We tried everything. We did the checklist on relationships. We spent time together. We had fun. We traveled. We had nice things. We
served others.
Yeah. I mean, it was, we were very kind to each other. She was a wonderful friend. I mean, she was my best friend, more so than a wife. I just didn't like that. I enjoyed the friendship more than anything. So what kind of track are we on as far as relationship?
Whatever you want to talk about. If you want to talk a little bit about our history, I think that would be fun, because it looked, I thought that's where you were going to, because it really looked like we were, we looked really great from the outside for a really long time. And then it all started to unravel, and then it looked like we'd never speak to each other again. That's kind of the synopsis. So whatever you want to say about how that went down and how you were seeing that, or maybe Lisa has questions, since she hasn't gotten to speak with you about it before. So
oh, that's okay. I just want to reflect how I think it's so interesting. Y'all came together seeking the same thing in the other. Yes. And I know Kathy, you didn't necessarily say that you were looking for, you didn't want to be alone. You were looking for someone to kind of fill that, what they say in the rooms, the God-sized hole, right? But you were both seeking that in the other. And did it work?
No.
He said something really funny when we first started talking again, and he'll get to that part of the story in a minute. But he said he realized that he was trying to use me to get what he wanted, and I was trying to use him to get what I wanted. And the joke was neither one of us had it. So there was literally zero possibility that was going to work.
Right. And just to reflect one other thing you said, Dale, about having like the checklist of all the things, right? Y'all had a beautiful life together. It sounds like, I know there were complications and issues and challenges. And, when we are constantly reaching for that thing outside of ourselves to make ourselves whole or feel better about ourselves, having the checklist of the nice things and the traveling and, and that's something I'm constantly working with on folks as, as humans, I think we often just reach outside ourselves to feel better, but it's temporary. Like, you were saying that it didn't last very long, that feeling that Kathy, you were saying about, you would seek someone to reflect your value, and it would work for a minute and then it wouldn't. And so it's not sustainable.
Well, I'll tell you, the turning point, it was 10 years. When we split up, it was, I went on about a 10-year run. And
nobody knows what that means.
Oh,
Unless they've been on one. So you have to be more specific.
Yeah. So as far as the substance abuse, I was just daylight to dark for about 10 years, drinking cocaine.
So glad you survived.
I'm shocked.
Seriously.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. So when I landed, I ended up in Phoenix, Arizona, and I kind of landed on my feet. You know, I said, God, I got out there and I was homeless. I mean, I had the clothes on my back. You know, I came from this lifestyle of having anything I wanted, and you know, I had a master's degree. I had jobs that, you know, just a very impressive resume, so to speak. And so when I landed out there, I was 50 years old, standing on the street corner in the clothes I had when I got out of jail. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. So over a period of time, like I say, when I got on my feet and got my head a little clearer, I got involved with AA. So part of the program, you get to a part where you make a list of all the people you harmed. And so Kathy, of course, was at the top of the list. So I was like, oh God, I really dreaded that phone call, you know? So I was going to come back to Asheville. I can't remember even why, but I was going to come back here. And prior to that, I said, well, I'll go ahead and call her. Maybe I can get together, have a cup of coffee. And so I called her up. I tracked her down. I didn't know where she was at. So I tracked her down to where she was working. And got a phone call back. And of course, she thought I was dead. Okay. So she called back and she says, hey. I said, I was very nervous. I said, hey. She said, where are you? She said, first of all, she was amazed I was alive. And then she says, where are you? And I was like, Phoenix, Arizona. She says, what are you doing there? And I said, long story. I said, I'm coming to town in a couple of weeks. Why don't we have a cup of coffee if you want to? And I'll tell you about it. She said, no, I got time. Go ahead. Tell me. So I told her the story of the last 10 years and it's just an amazing story. But so I told her the story, and at the end of it, I says, listen, is there anything I can do to make this right? And she said, and I'm waiting to get raked over the coals, you know? And she says, yeah, there is. You can know that I had just as much to do with it as you did. I was just, it's gonna make me cry. She said, I was just as sick as you in my own way. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, it was just such a shocking response that I just couldn't even speak. And then she said, I love you. And I was like, it was just totally beyond anything I could ever dreamed of. So she continued to talk from this different perspective of where she was seeing her view of life. And after she talked a while, I was like, oh my God, she needs to be on meds, man. She's
Sometimes I think about that with Kathy too, but no, it's me that needs to be on the meds, right?
He was talking so far out there of new ideas and things and love. I mean, here's the thing. It sounded like she was speaking directly from love. I was trying to find kinks or in the armor there. That I was trying to find, little. I was trying to find something wrong with where she was coming from because I didn't trust it. I was
right.
There's an angle here. I just know it, and I'm going to find it. Okay. So I was so curious, and at a point that, through the years and years of addiction, ultimately all I really was looking for was peace. And, the way I was looking at myself and the world, it was so flat to me. I was just so bored. I was like, this is it, this is what it's about. So I was really at the point I was looking for, I paused. I was looking for a new perspective, and it was just perfect timing. I was open to the craziness, madness she was talking about, this view. And so we began to talk on a weekly basis. And initially, I mean, I really was able, she offered me a new perspective. I guess that's the best way to put it. And I was open to looking at that to a degree. I mean, each week, I mean, there were some weeks that'd go by, I'd get so pissed at her. I'd be like, I'm never speaking to her again, ever. I mean, like, because honestly, I was threatened. At points, I was threatened.
I totally understand. I told Kathy to fuck off many times.
Oh, yeah. I was like, that's exactly right. You took the words right out of my mouth. I didn't know if the FCC was going to shut us down or whatever.
Oh no. Yeah,
yeah, I was just really pissed, because basically she was just pointing toward, she was pointing toward something different from the way I was looking at it. And it was very threatening to the world I had created. So basically it was asking me to look at the way I was thinking about myself, life, the whole 9 yards. So basically she was asking me it felt like it was an unraveling. And I, all my security issue, I was like, oh no. But slowly I was so willing and so over this life that, and the way, I just getting sober over and over and over again, and rebuilding, and then getting back into the same flow of the template. Okay, you need to follow these rules. And I was like, you know what? I'm so tired of that I'm going to listen to what she's saying. I'm going to be open to it. And
can I ask you a question right here? Just because I think it might be helpful to people to know, like, what was I saying to you that felt so threatening? Like, I think that would be helpful for people to know. Like, if you can't remember the exact words, just like what kinds of things felt the most threatening?
Really, when I say challenging, you weren't challenging. You were really pointing to the idea of Dale, this thing I had created, the show, which was, I need to be approved of, the security that I found in money, which I was not going to let go of. I'm like, look, if I don't have $10,000 in the bank, I don't want to hear a word about me not being number one at work, number one in sales. Yes. Those two things, approval and money. When she started getting to those areas and kind of asking me or offering me the opportunity to see where that was robbing me of an opportunity to be free. Man, when she would start digging at that, I mean, I would be pissed. And so, because it scared me to death, it's like, what if I don't have approval? What if I don't walk in the office? We had this huge board on the office that listed 20 sales guys. And, I was number one, like, every freaking week. And I made shit tons of money. And it was like, and she was telling me that was basically a false foundation, and I was like, I am not letting go of that. I'll do some of this other stuff that feels good, but I'm not.
So you weren't fully willing to surrender yet.
Yeah, you can stop right there, sister.
I have to say also, just acknowledge what Dale was willing to do, because I was his ex-wife.
Oh yeah, that was tough.
I was the woman that he had that 10-year long relationship with, where we tried all the things to make it work, and where, from my old perspective, our whole problem was his addiction. I thought that, right? And so did he.
Yeah.
And so it was all of our focus, and any therapist that we saw was like focused, like, you know, the best one that we saw, even his view was, yeah, you're codependent and that's annoying, but his addiction blows your lives up. So we have to, like, you know, this is the thing that we're focusing on. And yes, you need to take care of that codependence thing, but addiction just gets everybody just all spun out about, oh my God, what are we going to do about this? You know, how are we going to stop this from happening? So Dale had been through all of that with me, had been really obliterating himself for 10 years after that. And then he is willing to, like, let go of what he thinks he is, and his relationship to the world and everybody, and his relationship to me.
Sure.
Because he was having to hear me talk like someone he did not know. Even though, as he used to say when we would talk on the phone, he would say, it's so wild because the sound of your voice is the same. You know, that's
right. Right. You were still looking for that angle to get in.
Yeah.
And try to dismantle what she was saying is not true. Yeah.
And I changed her name. I changed her name. I even put it in my phone under a different name. So I could think of her as like that wife that was in my life. Because what she was saying was so valuable that I had to get past the sound of the voice that I knew her as. Because she was not the same. And so I was doing whatever I could to get past that, you know, because it was very true that it wasn't the same person at all, really, but it was just a voice speaking from love. And that's what it came to, that I came to understand. So as time went on, continuing to offering the opportunity to look at my value, because like I say, you can talk to your blue in the face, you know, as far as turning around my idea of my value of being not worthwhile, not, you know, worthless, not fitting in. So it's just her offering a different way of viewing myself. And it took some time. It can happen in about 2 seconds if you're open to that. But I kind of took the long road. It's like
the 40 years in the desert, Kathy.
Exactly.
Yes.
My God, I'm going to find it. Like, she was always pointing, you can walk 11 miles. I think it was 11 miles. 11 days. 11 days or 40 years. What's
40 years.
I'll take the 4 years, by God. Anyway. So I couldn't find any flaws in what she was. I mean, and trust me, I tried to find anything because I tried so many things over this experience, my life. I tried everything under the sun, every guru, every book, every program, you know,
several rehabs.
Oh, rehabs. Yeah, a lot of several rehabs. So I tried everything that's possibly been offered in this lifetime for me, and so that's why I was just I was willing to take a look at this. And honestly, like I say, it can happen in 2 seconds. I mean, one of the exercises that she has in the book is so powerful, and it's the question goes, you know, because one of the main things in addiction is you feel like you don't fit in. It always, you'll hear that in every story almost. Well, I never feel like I fit in. And it's just so real. It's just like, there's always something out there that represents fitting in. I don't know what it is, but it's supposed to be out there. And so the question posed in the book that she offers is, look around the room and see if there's any evidence that you don't fit in, and accept your thoughts. Other than that, is there any evidence? And I could not find any. And that's how quick that you can have a different perspective, or that I had a different perspective. And I was like, holy shit, it's like magic. The other thing she offered that is so powerful is inquiry. She talks about Byron Katie sometimes. Simple 4 steps or 4 things to do of taking a thought, because it's all about thoughts is what I found that she kept pointing to. It's just thoughts. And so taking a thought and challenging it, you know, saying, is it true? Do you know this to be 100% true? And I never found a time when it was. And then taking it to the next step of basically, who would you be without that thought? And to do that, take a moment and do that. And it's always for me, without the thought, it's like, wow, I can be free. I can just do what I do. Be whatever comes up. Just without that thought, man, life is peaceful. That's what I've been looking for the whole time. And then, you know, turn it around. It's like, you know what, I do fit in, or whatever the thought was, you know, whatever. That's what I found too. And it's like, anytime something comes up and I feel fearful or anxious, stop right there. Because it should not exist. I mean, it's because that thought, that's what I need to look at. So I know I've been talking a lot, but I'll let you guys but that was the key, you know, inquiry, looking at thoughts. I mean, that creates the whole experience, like you guys have been talking about the past few weeks.
I want to throw out there that the reason that thoughts seem so real and true and powerful, the ones that do. So lots of brilliant clients have asked me, I think Dale also asked this question early on. They said, why is it easy for me to know that some things that I think are not true and others seem absolutely true? So that's when really, thank you everybody, addicts in quotation marks, that I've worked with. Because of that question asked over and over, I started to see there was a simpler way to say what was happening. And that was, anything that seems to fit in with how you define yourself, those are the things you're going to believe. And so I'm like, let's just skip all this middle stuff and go directly to, like, how are you defining yourself? Because that is going to determine even the thoughts you believe. It's going to determine what seems true to you with regard to relationships or the world or yourself, everything. Every single thing comes through that self-definition. So that is like now I can say, like, instead of 40 years or 11 days, I could really say 40 years or 11 seconds. You know, however long it takes you to be ready to see that your self-definition is arbitrary. It's something that you learned from people who thought it about themselves. So it was never even originally about you. So you're walking around with a self-definition that was handed down from the people around you, and they got it from the people around them, and so on, until no one knows where it came from.
Right.
And all manner of assholery in the thinking seems like a real solid world because it's built on that self-definition, and you're always using that to see what you think is true and what isn't true. And one of the things that really annoyed Dale and you and a lot of other people that I've worked with is when I recognize the truth about you, which is once ever expression of God, higher power, life source, universe, whatever you want to call it, that you are that. You're once ever. And there's no being more valuable or more precious or more true than that. And so anything else you say about yourself is not true, except for that one thing. And so you can see how if you saw your whole life, including romantic relationships and everything else, from that place of you are once ever, you can see what an immediately different world it is. It's not even something that takes a while. It's just look at it right now. You know, you don't matter, or you are once ever. I mean, 11 seconds max.
Right. And the unraveling begins, you know, and it's like, that's how I've described that feeling that I experience. I don't know if this has been true for you, Dale, but that feeling of, like, you can almost feel it, you know, just unravel inside.
Yeah.
There's just this, you know, physical somatic expression of it.
And the thing is, I think about when you say that, it's like, how's that been working for you, holding on to that
Right.
You know,
It's exhausting.
Yeah. It's like, and I do have the choice. It's like, okay, you can hold on to that. You can hold on to the security through money or approval. Go ahead. Let me know how that works out. And I tell myself that, go ahead. I'll be waiting here with the truth. So for me, it led just to suffering every time, you know, anxiety and fear. And it's like, it feels horrible. So it's like, that's why I just felt so horrible that I was just willing to look at things. I was willing to look at things differently, you know? And in the relationship, I mean, what we both described is what we were looking for in a relationship to somehow get value from the other person. What a train wreck, you know, when I mean, the relationship needed to explode. It's the best thing that ever happened. I mean, I'm grateful for that, because before I was like, what an asshole. You blew everything. I mean, I carried that. It was like, oh my God, it was just like this, such guilt. It's like, man, we had it all and I fucked it up. You know, I let everybody down. And so it did have to explode.
Will you say something about how, so I wrote a whole book taking full responsibility for my experience in that, right? Because I see clearly now what that was, how my own self-definition played out in that relationship. And addiction is just so loud that it seems like the biggest problem. But my self-definition was the same as his. I didn't matter. And so it just played out in two different ways on the surface, but it really was the same self-definition. I was going to ask you to say something about, I lost my train of thought there. Oh, I know what it was, about how, say something about your view of addiction then, and how.
Oh yeah.
And maybe about relapsing and about your view of it now.
Yeah. So the addiction, what was really helpful was when she pointed out, I would be like, well, I would give her specific examples. One morning I came in after an all-nighter, maybe 2 days, I don't know, 3 or 4.
Probably 5.
Oh, all right. So something along those lines.
A long minute.
A long minute, that's right. Otherwise occupied.
Otherwise occupied is what we call it now. That sounds so much better.
It does.
So I came in and she was standing there. And I was like, oh, I've started running my game. Oh, so sorry. I'm going to, straighten up and regroup and get things going and treatment, therapy. And she just laid her wedding ring on the counter there. And she said, I'm done. I'm not watching you kill yourself. And I was shocked, because I would have bet every penny I had in the bank that she would never leave me, ever. So I was like, she'll be back, So she never came back. I mean, that was the interesting part here. But to her point, to her question, the way I looked at addiction, she pointed out, she said, let's go back to that scene right there. So we went back to that scene where I'm standing there. She's telling me that. And I was like, I really blew it. I messed it up. I could have done this. I could have done it differently. I shouldn't have. What was I thinking? And she says, look at what you believed about yourself at that moment. Is there any way possible you could have made a different choice? Because that was the whole idea. I could have made a different choice. And what I saw was, based on what I believed about myself at that moment, there's no way. I had no choice. The only choice I could make was what I was doing, not feeling, because my idea was using equaled peace, escape, the promise of that anyway. And just to see that point of I couldn't have made a different choice based on what I believed was mind-blowing. I was like, whoa. So is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah,
When you say
absolutely.
relapse, what do you mean by when you say
like kind of what your view of that was before, like why you couldn't stay clean
oh yeah,
for however long, and then how you see that now?
there was no way for me to ever stay clean, ever. There's no way for me not to relapse based on, you know, the way I saw myself. When we say value, it's just what I learned, what I believed. There's no way I could have made any other decision. And, you know, through a different perspective, there's a lot to that, the perspective of how, you know, I guess I would say that inquiry is number one. It gives me the opportunity to have a different perspective, which changes up my view, which changes up the idea of escape and freedom through substance. It's like, I chuckle when I think about, you know, having a beer or doing cocaine. It's like that. I just chuckle at that and think that why in the world, of course it's a lie about the escape and freedom and fun and all that, but to clearly see that, why would I want to escape this view that I have, which is a view. I just feel so free in this moment. It's all about being in the moment. You hear that such a tagline, but honestly, knowing this is another thing that's very helpful for me is there is no next ever. There's no next. It's there's no past. There's no next. Okay. That for me, seeing that the experience is happening now, there's no need to deviate from that, you know, with this idea of whatever, if it's a substance, if it's a person, if it's any other thing, you go down the list. There's no need to deviate from that when everything right here in this moment is perfect all the time, always.
Always, all the time.
Always, all the time.
Why settle for less?
Exactly.
And that's right.
Just to kind of bring this all the way back around to relationships, how would you say that your relationships with other people changed when you realized this new view of yourself?
Yeah. So I wasn't dependent. First of all, I was very dependent on other people to constantly reassure me and tell me how wonderful I am, and I wanted them to like me, and, you know, like I say, think that what I do is wonderful. I'm very smart, and respect me. And so when I don't need that, it's like it's just an interaction of, if I'm not focused on what they can give me or what I can get from them, it just creates a whole different experience of, I just get to enjoy you. Like sitting here talking to you, I just get to enjoy you. I don't need anything from you. I don't need Lisa to tell me, wow, you sound wonderful. Tell me more. Can you tell me a little bit more about how much money you made, or how funny you are? Tell me a joke. But so back to the relationships. When I think of a relationship, I would always think, what can I get from them? What are my needs? What can I get from them? And when that's not there, it's just, I can look at what I can give. It's like, I just look at another person's situation. It's like, whatever comes up in that moment that I can, offer encouragement or love, or maybe offer them a different way of looking at what they're going through. It's like, what if, and it's just like, that's so much fun. Because when I just speak from experience, when I'm locked in a zone of viewing life or things or situations that are going on a certain way, and somebody pops out a ray of sunshine of a different way of looking at things, it's like, and you see that look on their face, and that, oh man, that's so awesome. It's like, I just gave them something beautiful and wonderful, just for a moment. I mean, it's up to all of us if we want to look at things differently. But man, what a great opportunity to offer a different view.
Absolutely. And what you just described, I was thinking about how validation, when we're seeking approval or we're seeking something from someone else, that validation. I work with so many folks who are addicted to validation for that self-approval, right?
Yeah.
And when we can let go of that need or that belief that we need validation, like that's freedom too.
Yeah, because the problem with that, it does feel good. Okay. It feels great for people just to pump you up. But the thing is, it's temporary and it's not real. Because you walk away, it's like, man, that's great. I got a good feeling from how they described me or a situation I was involved in. Walk away. Well, guess what? That's over. And then it's back to it's almost like an addiction, like you were just mentioning. It's like, I'm going to need some more of that, and it's like I said, it always leads down to the road of suffering.
Absolutely.
Can I clarify just for a moment about why that seems to feel good?
Yes.
Because it would not give us that little giddy bounce to get somebody's positive feedback unless we went into that situation certain that we weren't good enough. There's no other way for that feeling to get created. You have to come in thinking that you are less than everybody else in the situation, and that's why, like, it's not a crazy thing. If you come in with that self-definition, then you do need everyone else to say, because you have no compass. If you think you're not good enough, then the only way that you know where you are, the only way you can orient yourself in any kind of situation is by other people's reaction. So if you're seeing yourself from that perspective, you are 100% right. You do need other people's approval. You need it for a very practical reason, because you don't know where you are without it. So I just wanted to say that because people feel crazy when they know everything that you and Dale just said about it, and that they keep doing it, and that makes them feel crazier.
Yes.
But there's a good reason why, and that would be it. So at the point that you recognize that you're once ever and all the implications of that, you never come into a situation half full. You are always fulfilled because you are walking as that once ever. As that, you are your compass. You already are oriented. You don't need anybody to help you know where you are, because you're the one who knows. And then you are, as Dale described, you are free. It's playtime. I mean, there's literally nothing else that you need after that. That's kind of if in 11 seconds, any 11 seconds you're in that place, then you can feel what that feels like, and you will not settle for less after that.
I want to read you a definition.
Okay.
All right. So when I was thinking about relationship, like I say, when Kathy mentioned you were talking about possibly talking about relationships today, this morning I woke up and I was like, relationships. So if we're going to talk about that, let me write down a couple things, So an hour later, I'm all the way back to where I learned the idea of what a relationship was about, going all the way back to my mother, and this is what a woman is and her behavior. And I'm like, okay. And then witnessing my parents' interaction, and it's like, okay, that's a relationship. And so what I learned and what I believed about relationships really started there. So I looked up the definition of relationship. Okay. And this is more romantic, or we're talking about romance, but let's talk about both ways. A typical relationship, the definition, the way in which people are connected. But I like the romantic relationship because that's more interesting. So the romantic definition was individuals who have intentions that each person will be a significant part of their ongoing lives. So what stood out to me in that definition was individuals, starting with that. Individuals, how do they see themselves? how did they define relationships? So you got individuals starting, this is the starting point of the relationship, individuals.
Right.
So so how does each one of us define ourselves going into the idea of another person being part of our lives, you know? So, because what I got to was really what I believed about myself created the experience of the relationship. So starting with individuals, when we're talking about relationships, I know for myself, bringing in the relationship that I was unimportant, I didn't matter, you know, instability. So it was just a mess when you're talking about relationships. I just wanted to share those definitions because I always like to go back and define the word. And my point was, what did we learn, or what did I learn that a relationship was? So when you mention relationships today, and it's like, okay, what did I learn? And what an opportunity to look. I did not know that I went back a long way and looked at a lot of different variables that were involved. And that's really cool. It was really cool for me to see. It's like, where did I learn what a relationship was?
You look so serious all of a sudden. So I thought of a fun question to ask you.
Who?
I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
Which is, do we have a romantic relationship?
Do we?
Yeah.
I know our listeners can't see the look on Dale's face at the moment, but that was just great.
Well, no.
I just thought it would be fun to have you say something about what, now they've heard like what our relationship was, and then that kind of transitional phase. And so what is it now? How would you talk about it now?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah. So it's more of I like to think of it as the interaction. It's almost like this energy, like when I talk with her, there's this different energy. It's a different, what's that, frequency? That's the word I'm trying to think of. There's a certain frequency I experience with her, and like no other, like that was there from the beginning. That's outside of the craziness. There was always this connection in that way that I always kind of experienced. But now it's on a different level, but it's just this interaction. It's like I feel, or the feelings as far as the relationship, I could go so many directions, but it's more of just the enjoyment of her creativity, my creativity, and kind of just giving each other their space to be who they are. You know, it's just, that's what I enjoy. That's kind of more, if I were to define it, that's what it's about.
You know, and I remembered the story that you wrote at 2:00 in the morning a couple of days ago. Do you want to share that?
Yeah. I woke up at 2:03 in the morning. I wake up at these odd hours. You ever wake up at 6:05?
I woke up at 4:03 this morning.
Did you really?
I did.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, but that's not uncommon for me.
The 6:05 thing is crazy. I used to, when we were together, I would wake up at like 3:00 in the morning. Okay. I would wake up at 3:00. As soon as my eyes open, my mouth was going 90 miles an hour. I mean, I would be like straight out. I had ideas, I had thoughts, and she needed to hear them.
I had Beth wake up and pay attention to.
Oh my God. If she didn't, we got a problem.
He would be so angry if I didn't like sit up and be his audience. For real. That's a true story. That is a true story. So the other day before we knew that the topic was going to be relationships, he woke up at 2:00 whatever it was, and imagined if you had asked him like how he sees our story now, and he wrote down this beautiful thing that has escaped his notebook. It seems like.
I'll find it in a minute. Well, yeah, go ahead. Talk about something else.
Talk amongst yourselves. Do you have other questions, Lisa, or?
Well, I do. I have a question. I was thinking about how when y'all came together initially and y'all were seeking, you know, your value in the other, and how, and this might be, well, how that looks for you now. I mean, obviously y'all are coming at your current relationship, non-romantic relationship, from a place of your,
kiss her and all.
you know, your own. But I would too. From this place of, you know.
Oh no, you got her.
I was
back on track, Lisa. Come on.
Back on track. I mean, who doesn't love Kathy? Everyone loves Kathy. So that y'all are coming now into your current relationship from this place of freedom that each of you have found. And so I just wonder, you know, given I know I heard you say there's no past. Y'all have, you know, you have
there's a story.
There's a story, for sure. And so I wonder if there's ever anything that does come up where you find yourself slipping into an old pattern, an old thought of, you know, seeking the other's approval.
Go ahead. I'll follow up on that one.
Okay. Okay, so those of you who worked with me are saying the answer right now before I
do.
Well, for me, that's not possible because you would have to have a piece of that old self-definition still in place in order to create such an experience. And it has been many years since I had that. So it's not, and I want to say, I always rapidly follow that up with, not because I'm special, but because I was serious about letting all of that go, about really seeing what was true and what wasn't true. And once you see that it's not true, it has no effect. It's just like Santa Claus, as I say every week when we talk about this, right? That your self-definition is like belief in Santa. Once you found out he wasn't true, you never wake up and go, oh my God, I'm believing in Santa again. I wonder if he'll come today. Like, nobody does that. And so the self-definition works that same way. And because of that, there's no way for me to want anybody's approval. There's like, it's just not a thing. And as far as our past story goes, it's the context for all of our funniest interactions. So we love it because it's hilarious. And so we laugh a lot about that, but neither one of us can believe that was a true thing, because it so clearly comes from seeing through that old self-definition. And as soon as you don't, then it's not a thing. And so it's very clear that it's not real. And so it's just funny. But what do you want to say about that?
As far as like I would, if I were to think about that, it's anytime I think about the relationship, it was based on what we were talking about earlier. So I don't have that same feeling about relationships, because my whole experience with relationships was based on filling the void, filling the hole, you know. So without that, minus that, it's like I really don't need relationships. The definition for me was based on not being alone. That's it, you know. I don't want to be alone. I want somebody to approve of me, which means they care for me, which means I have love. So without needing that, I really don't need a relationship. My relationship, I was telling her this morning when I was writing that it stands out for me. My relationship, the relationship I have in life, is with my purpose here. And that is to be the visionary that I am. I love to look at things and make them better and create things, create something from, sometimes from nothing. Sometimes I get inspired, and also sometimes I monetize them, you know, and it's, that's worked out a lot. And things, and seriously, it just falls in my lap. I mean, people that come into my life, relationships and things like that. It's just been, it's a lot of it's not me doing it. It's just something it's part of kind of the flow, I guess you could say, that is, you know, my experience. So that's my relationship. Kathy, I love her to death. She's just amazing. But it's more, I don't define a relationship like that anymore. That's something that somebody is going to, that I'm not going to feel alone, because I don't feel alone. I'm not. So there's no need for a relationship in my eyes. You know, I don't, everybody has their own definition, you know? Yeah. So it's more of just experiencing. It's not something I need to hold on to and keep. That always leads to suffering for me. So I kind of just go the path of freedom.
I love that. I love what you said about my relationship with my purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
It's, yeah, that's when I feel it's exciting. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you for hours about creating things and making them, improving or doing them differently, you know, take a piece of art and then add my spin or take on it. Oh my gosh, I'm excited. And we'll make money.
Oh.
Not an either or situation.
Okay. Did you find that
I didn't
poem?
find it.
You did.
It may be another note. Is it in another notebook?
I don't know.
It's really lovely. And if
tell her about it.
If you don't find it, don't worry. You tell her. It's your words. Go ahead.
Okay. And I'll try to, I guess I'll paraphrase. I thought about, I can't remember it, Kathy.
That's okay. That's okay. Don't worry about it.
I was thinking about, it's when I woke up at 2 or 3. Yeah.
It was basically an overview. It was a very poetic overview of our this whole story arc of our relationship, which was that he came from this galaxy of light to here.
What if what if a galaxy sent an expression of itself, a light, so to speak, to have a human experience in the form of Dale, okay? And then the human experience turned out, you know, my story, okay? It turned out like that. Then I met Kathy, okay? And our two stories combined, and then it ended, never to see each other again, you know? And so that's where that kind of stopped. Then we reconnected, and I had always seen something in her, you know, like I said, there was something, that connection, that energy outside of everything else. So then we reconnected, and she reminded me of where I came from. And it was like the whole point, it came full circle. The expression of, and it's funny, there's a universe on the front of the book. So I looked up the galaxy. It's Messier 74. It's 30 million light years away. So what if that galaxy sent me what turned out to be a human experience, Dale, but actually the source, and then had this experience, and then the Kathy ended, and then reconnected, and she pointed out and reminded me of what I really am. And that was the beautiful full circle of it. That's why, in relation to relationships, that was just really cool. I wish I could find the exact words, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. So this has been such a special hour with you all.
Oh, really?
And
An hour?
can you believe we've been at,
Yeah.
we are at our hour time, and
Yeah.
I just feel like we could keep talking for many more hours.
Absolutely.
It's been such a special time to have this conversation with y'all and to share.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you going to be here next week?
I'm leaving Wednesday. Maybe we can work something out. We'll talk about it. Maybe we can all link up.
Yeah, it would be great. I think you all have a super amazing story, and just it's heartwarming. And I remember, I just want to say, like, super quick, when you were talking about getting in touch with Kathy to make your amends, I remember Kathy coming to my house not long after that phone call and telling me that whole story from her perspective. And it was just, I remember saying, "You're still married?" And just how Kathy really put, like, I remember you saying, Kathy, that this was like such a, I don't want to say test, that's not the right word, but, it was a real opportunity for you to put all the work that you had done in, dismantling this old self-definition of you through this experience of really just saying, okay, like, how is this, like, you're the man that just, y'all's story was so beautiful, and she, the love that she would talk about having for you, and I know she still does, and I know that looks different now, but that just it was a real opportunity for you to look inward and say, yeah, this is all very, not that it wasn't true before, but it was just a real example of.
I think that I remember sitting on your sofa, us facing each other, drinking tea, as we often did on your in your living room there. And I remember saying, what was initially so delightful to me was that if anything was going to reveal something left unaddressed, right?
Yes.
If there was anything about me or in me that that hadn't been cleared out, so to speak, that hadn't dissolved, like, that would be the event that would reveal that, because he was such a part of so much of my past, and everything I thought I was, and everything I thought about addiction, and all that whole thing. So really, he could have been the thing that revealed to me, oh, I have some more work to do. And my immediate organic response to him was what he described, speaking from love. That it was just so delightful to me that was true. And I didn't know if it would be, until the situation happened. So
thanks for articulating that much more beautifully than I did.
I'm glad you reminded me of it.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. So
this was super delightful, and we probably will keep talking about relationships for a minute. Again, we're inviting everybody who listens to this to please leave your questions or comments underneath the podcast, or mine and Lisa's emails are always included, and we're happy to have you email us about anything that you want to talk about.
Absolutely.
So you want to give our closing line?
Yes, all joy all the time, because why settle for any less?